Hello, everyone. Hello. Are y'all too dark for you? Okay, it's not good. It's soothing. Yeah, out of the sun of the light. Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thanks for being here on Sunday afternoon. I'm Madeline, the events director here at Malaprop. So just wanted to welcome you all here, give you a couple of housekeeping notes, and then introduce our special guests today. Before I move on, just a friendly reminder to silence your cell phones or anything else that might make a noise or disruption. We have two restrooms down the hallway. They both take a code to get into. If you've already purchased a book, the code will be at the bottom of your receipt. It's 4 numbers and a pound sign. If not, you're welcome to go back to our checkout counter, straight back at the green wall, and they will print out a code for you. We have all of David's books, as well as Jennifer's, behind the checkout counter as well, so you don't have to go searching for them. You can just head straight back there. As you'll know, we're already closed today, so if you wouldn't mind, if you wanted to purchase a book, go ahead and do that first before coming up to chat with the author or with among your friends. That will help us kind of keep our closing duties on time today. There's a couple empty seats up front here if you all want them. And of course, we are an indie bookstore. We have a new author here with us. We love to host these events. So purchasing the author's books helps all of us. It helps our whole economy. It's a feel-good activity. So we like to encourage that. Any support you offer our store is much appreciated. We also have a live stream today. So hello, everyone that's joining us online. Thanks for being here. I will give y'all some instructions on how to send a question for the author later. And I'll do my best to ask that question on your behalf. For all of y'all as well, you're welcome to ask questions once we get to that portion. And without further ado, I'm here to introduce our guests. We're very excited to host David Gate, presenting his new poetry and essays collection, A Rebellion of Care. Joining him in conversation is Jennifer Lapidus. David Gate grew up in London before making his way to Belfast, Northern Ireland, and Jacksonville, Florida. Very interesting. Don't know about that one. He now lives in the ancient Appalachian Mountains of Asheville, North Carolina, where he writes, mills flour, and tends to a 1-acre homestead with his partner and children. Jennifer Lapidus is the founder and principal of Carolina Ground Flour Mill in Hendersonville, North Carolina. She launched Natural Bridge Bakery in 1994, where she milled her flours in-house and baked her naturally leavened breads in a wood-fired brick oven. Her bakery was the first of its kind in Western North Carolina and was featured in Peter Reinhardt's Whole Grain Breads. Jennifer was formerly on the board of the Carolina Farm Stewardship Association and is co-organizer of the Asheville Bread Festival. Please welcome David and Jennifer.
I'm gonna kick off with a poem. Can I do that? Is that all right? Okay. Thank you all for coming. Jennifer's also my boss. I don't know how many of you know that. So she's my friend, and she's an author. It's her book here, Southern Ground. She's amazing. Not just the recipes in here are phenomenal, but the writing in there is also incredible. But she's also my boss, so I have to do a good job. So this is one of the new poems from the book. So a lot of the poems in the book, well, I think maybe about 20% of the poems in the book have already appeared online in various capacities, whether that's on Instagram or Substack or various publications. But most of the book is new, and this is one of the new ones, and this is from the chapter Friendship Will Save Us, and it's called Give Flowers. Give flowers to your friends and poems to your people. Make mixtapes and playlists with songs you think they will love. Call out the qualities they cannot see in themselves, for a single encouragement can be enough nourishment to sustain them through famine, and call them back to themselves when they are lost at sea. Throw banquets of glee for the heartiest of loves and the ugliest of sobs in a communion of saints, where the profound and profane ring through the same air. Share as much time as you can before the finale arrives, for the quality of our friendships is the quality of our lives. So yeah, I just wanted to read on. So welcome, my friends.
Yeah, I wanted to share, so yes, David works for me, but we have, it's been a really interesting relationship. David now just kind of, he comes when we need him at this point, and because we have a couple other millers and it's such a treat. I mean, it's great for us to have a fully trained miller who comes when we need him because our business is on demand. So, but he calls it his palate cleanser, which I love that, the tactile work. But when David first came to me, he sent me this message. I wanted to, he sent me his resume and an email, and I need to share what he wrote because I thought it was so funny. He said, "We're British and we've been in America for 11 years. My career history before moving to Asheville has been working for churches, but I want to note that we're of the helping the poor, orphans, and refugees side of the faith, and not at all on the MAGA end of the but we have been in, I don't know, I feel like we have been in a conversation since, I mean, I started reading his newsletter, which was really fun because it comes out on, I think, Saturday morning. And then he would come in on Monday morning, and there was always something in there that just had such relevance to my whatever. It was so interesting to me. But so we would get these snippets of conversation, and I feel like I've been able to observe you as you've kind of evolved as a poet, but at the same time that I've been evolving, like that my business has been evolving, and that there has been sort of a symbiotic thing there, you know, and one of the piece about that, and then you can just reflect on it, is just that there is a parallel too, because the process of milling and the process of writing are both very much solitary experiences, but both of us are trying to do this thing that, although the process is completely solitary, and I mean, I know for me, I kind of, my poor husband, demand just like, you know, space and time when I'm writing, but also when I'm working in the mill room, like I don't personally like to have others when I'm doing something like milling. It's very, it engages the senses. There's a lot of, it's not just like press a button. And yet the whole point of it is to kind of connect with humans. So I just throwing that out to you.
Yeah, I think what I love about that job is process. And so I think when I turned, I'm 44, and when I turned 40, I kind of decided that I wanted the second half of my life to be not to be goal orientated or achievement orientated, but to be process orientated. Because the processes that you do is how you actually spend your life, right? So not shooting for some kind of arbitrary success or arbitrary, let's get to here, let's go there, let's do that, but to focus on just doing things I liked. And so one of the things that drew me to milling, in the same way that drives me to writing poetry, is that it's a process I enjoy. And so I really love making flour. I love paying attention to the details, and that's another way. It's very much like poetry writing. I think out of all the writing, really poetry is about paying attention. That's what it's about. And the thing I'm always trying to do is pay attention to a very small thing, whether that be a very small thing in my life or a very small thing in nature. Really looking at the intricacies of that thing, whether it's like a very small emotion that I'm having, you know, it's like a momentary experience of life that I'm experiencing and paying real attention to it. And you find that often in the real specificity of a thing, you will find universal things. You'll find truth that resonates with other people, even in the incredible specificity of your own inner life. You will find things that are, you know, relevant to others. And so milling's like that too, where you have to just pay attention all the time. You can't switch off really, like, you know, that flour will get too hot, that machine or gum up, that, you know, that bag will drop and you're going to spend the next 10 minutes cleaning up flour. So like, it's, yeah, I love the specificity and the attention, the giving myself over to process, really, yeah. Right.
Yeah, I was thinking too, there's a little bit of there's a lot of bit of a vulnerability involved in sort of both worlds, I think, because what we're doing with Carolina Ground with this mill is very different than how most food production happens in this country. This is the antithesis of industrial food. I mean, most mills produce a million pounds of flour a day. What do we do?
Quite, yeah,
No, maybe a couple thousand is our
about 2,000.
2 to 2, you know, that's our, so can you put out a product and it has flavor, which is like a whole new thing, you know, flour before was just like a functional piece and you could put eggs and butter, but this is flavor forward and it has character, which, you know, so there was a vulnerability of creating this product, but the vulnerability of putting out what you just described in terms of I mean, it's like the magnifying glass on an emotion. And then on social media, it's a very, I mean, to me, it's like the magnitude of that. And yet what you've been able to accomplish is kind of the democratization of this form. People weren't seeking out poetry. And I mean, I think it's brilliant. But
yeah, it's a because Instagram is it's a photo app, right? Like it's not Twitter, it's not, you know, WordPress, it's not Tumblr, it's not meant to be this place where words exist, really. And yet, because we spend most of our time, or a lot of our time, far too much time on those apps, like, you know, we end up looking for that, we end up searching for meaning. We end up looking for things that are important to us and that give us meaning and give us purpose and resonate with us. And despite those apps just desperately trying to force us into short form video, you know, where they want you to watch a video for 10 seconds and then another one, and then, you know, it's 3 a.m. That's their whole business model. People still gravitate to words. And people still gravitate to reading, and so it's been a curious thing. I didn't even know that Instagram poetry was a thing. I just had things that I'd written that I had to share somewhere, and that's where my friends were, and so I shared it there. And none of my friends were very interested, which is, you know, about 2% were interested, and so eventually. So I started in like 2021, I started posting my things online, and I needed this creative outlet, like, you know, COVID had swallowed up 2020 and, you know, we'd been isolated and I just felt very disconnected from any kind of creative outlet. And so I was like, I've got these things that I've written, let's share them. And so I was like, okay, this is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna type them up, post them online, one a week. And I started in 2020. And sorry, 2021, and but about 3 months in, I was so disheartened because none of my friends were sharing or liking or doing anything. Like, clearly I was not hitting my friends, and so I'd kind of planned that what I was going to do is I was going to do this little video where I was just going to say, hey everyone, you know, like I'm writing here, you know, I'm creating, I'm putting myself out online. I would love it if you support that, blah, blah, blah. And I toyed with doing this and I wrote a little script for it. And right about the time I did that, I had some friends who had a baby and they named their baby something I didn't really like, right? So it was like, y'all Americans are weird. You know?
That's the least of it.
It's not an uncommon thing for me to roll my eyes at the names you give your children. But I thought to myself, but I messaged them and said, I love it. I love you and I love that name, right? And I did mean it, like I maybe didn't mean it in a kind of like taste sense, like I would never call my child that, but I did mean it in the sense of I love you and I love this child and this is who they're going to be in the world and I want to, you know, I love that. And so I had that happened at the same time that I had this thing, and I was like, that's a poem. Like you know, like be kind about the names your friends give to their children. And so and then I had the rest of it, which was like, you know, I just wanted people to like what I was doing. So I wrote a whole poem about it. And so let me read that one to you. It's just it's called Like Every Selfie. Which is also in the friendship chapter. Okay, this is Like Every Selfie. Be kind about the names your friends give to their children. Praise their haircuts, love their tattoos. It doesn't really matter if that's what you would do. Like every selfie, all of them. Clap their songs, cheer them on. You were born with a limitless supply of encouragements. Use every one of them. Don't wait for the eulogies to speak out loud, that your friends are precious and they make you feel proud. And so I did that one and I thought, this is, you know, it's like on the cornier end of what I do. But like, I was like, this is what I'm feeling. I'm going to put it out there. And that was like my first poem that really took off. Like it went a little mini viral. Like I think I got 1,000 followers from it, right? So it's, you know, it doubled how many followers I had like overnight. And so, yeah, just complain about your friends in a nice way is the way to do it. And so then after that, I had 1,000 new followers, none of which were my friends, so I could just leave all my friends and just forget about them and like move on to the new people. So, I'm only half kidding. So,
Yeah, when you came to us, I think you had half the followers you have now.
oh, way less.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was like 10,000 at the time, I think.
Yeah, and I'm curious about, I mean, I just keep falling back to like the vulnerability of that and if you are in as a writer, like if how that fit for you, you know?
Well, the thing about writing online, both on Instagram and Substack, is that I think the writer instinct is to get everything perfect before it goes into the world, right? Like that is, you know, definitely my writer's instinct. And talking to other writers, that's what I feel like. You always want to feel like you've just, you know, literally dotted every I and crossed every T, and you know, you've put all the Oxford commas in the right places, and you know, you've got the zero typos, and everything's flawless, and so forth. And when you've committed to like posting, you know, like a poem every week or a newsletter every week, there just isn't time to make it perfect, right? So you do your best in the time frame you have, and you just have to be vulnerable. You have to, you know, put it out in the world, even when it's not as good as you would like it to be, and you have to keep doing that. And as a writer, that feels really like really hard and really gross. But I kind of realized that a lot of other art forms do that. So, for example, you know, I was a musician and I was in bands when I was, you know, younger, and like you wouldn't think twice about doing a gig and playing a new song that was half finished, and you know that. Who cares? You know, it's like that's how you know if it's good or not. That's how you work out if it's, you know, connecting, you know, and that's how you grow as a writer, by actually engaging with the audience and getting feedback and, you know, how's this working in the room. And the same, like I remember comedians as well do this, where like, you know, if they're doing like a Netflix special, like that thing doesn't exist in isolation. Like they do small clubs to test material for months and years leading up to like the special. So like the development of the thing is in public, right? The development of the art itself is in public. And once I realized that, you know, actually that's what I was doing, Instagram, Substack every week, like the things I was writing that eventually became a book, were growing and incubating in public. which is horrific, right? You know, like it's such a, you know, Brené Brown has a phrase called the vulnerability hangover, where after you've shared, you know, and particularly for artists, you know, when you're sharing something, but also like in your relationships where you meet someone, you know someone, and you overshare a little bit, and you just feel that it feels like a hangover. It feels like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I shared that. I can't believe it. You know, like that's the feeling. And so, you know, the only way to get over that is just to do it and keep doing it. Just to do it and keep doing it and keep doing it. And eventually you know, just like alcohol, you build up a resistance. And so you have to be even more vulnerable in order to feel hungover. So yeah.
No, and I love that, I mean, I want to think of the social media world as just like stealing my soul, because sometimes it does that, but to use it in a space, and that's one of the things I mean, I will come in from work and I'm just like, you know, when David was working, and I would just, oh, I love that you get to be a voice that's heard on this platform, because you're saying something of substance, and you're saying something that people should hear. And, you know, it's, you know, we can all be like trying our best to push the needle in the right direction, but to have somebody on our team in a way that's like, I got this, I've got people that are listening. And even if some of them are just following because their friends have follow, and they're not, you know, it's still seeping in somewhere. And then the idea of using it as also a platform for kind of working out your material means that you're engaging the other side. You know, I mean, for me, as much as I'm like consistently trying to make a parallel here, I do think there is this parallel space of like, what are the elements that we feel like maybe they're not. I mean, we're never going to produce, we don't want to produce 1 million pounds of flour a day. Like we don't, I bought a second mill at the, you know, we have 2 mills, right? I bought a second one so that I could make our whole grain flour better, not so I could double our production, right? Like, who thinks like that? Because we do. We're like, okay, we want to be more efficient, and we want to continue to really hone in on the quality of what we're doing, because this is, you know, I mean, yes, the point was partly to connect the farmer, miller, and baker. That's a big point, but we also wanted to make a really good product, because we as humans deserve to have beauty in the world. We deserve to have poetry and flavor and nutritious food. And like in our town, they just did a rails to trails. It's amazing. Like overnight, people come out and they're walking and they're talking to their neighbors. Like these are the things that we kind of yearn for as humans. And so to see it, you know, to see something like this, and I don't know, I feel like that title says it all, a rebellion of care. I mean, it is a radical act to say, you know, this might not, or maybe it is gonna be the monetizing path to take, but it's the path I have to take, kind of thing.
Yeah, it's just a human forward approach to everything, right? So that's what, you know, when I was looking for a job and I found Carolina Ground, I was like, you had a human forward approach to everything. Like you treated the farmers like humans, you treated your workers, the millers, like humans, and you know, and with an enormous love for the bakers, and like giving them not flour at the, you know, price that would make the most money for you, but like giving them great flour at a price that would allow them to make great bread for all the people, right? And so it was just a very human forward business, and that is a radical act. Like I it's just so alien in this. Like there's nothing that kind of in our culture that leads that way, and it's costly and it's hard work and so forth. But I do think it's the kind of legacy that we're wanting to leave. And so, you know, that's a huge part of this book, A Rebellion of Care, is to have this human forward, human dignity forward approach to life. And so a huge thing about the book is, you know, and when it came out, and when the concept kind of solidified for me, was I was kind of really frustrated with, I mean, as I'm sure you all are, our political institutions, failing left, right, and centre, and even the ones that we like and we vote for, then they're not doing the best job either. So it's like, yeah, we're voting for whoever looks best on the ballot, but like even those options are not great. So it's definitely a frustration with our political institutions. And for me, that was like also in the UK as well. I'm sure none of you really know much about UK politics, but it's a shit show there too. So Brexit and all that. So so that, and then also just because I'm from a church background, and I've spent a lot of my life working for churches and being involved in those, and just constantly seeing how these institutions just churn people up. That it's all about growth. It's all about the spectacle. It's all about getting you to our side. It's all about money. It's all about numbers and just and not like human beings. Like it's not a human forward approach to looking after people. And I mean, I've always wanted to be in those environments because I believe them to be communities that care. Or wanted them to be communities that care. And so, just became more and more disillusioned with like these religious institutions, like particularly denominations, just seeing how much abuse gets covered up and, and how they intertwine themselves with politics and just, right? Like, it's like what I told you in the thing, in the email. But that left me like in my midlife, kind of lost without these, anchors that, would be like, okay, well, I voted this way, I still do because we're fighting something terrible. But, like this is where I stand politically, this is where I stand religiously or in my spiritual practices, and feeling a little bit lost to see, well, what do I really believe? What do I really think? What do I really want to spend the rest of my life doing? What do I really want to encourage? What do I want to build? Not just what I want to criticize in these places, right? Like, it's very easy to criticize politics and religion, and we can all do it. But what do I want to build? Like, what if I'm not going to like give myself over to those institutions anymore? Then what am I going to build? And so that was really when it came to it as a rebellion of care. It was like I feel like, and this is, I'm sure everyone in this room would agree with this. It's like that caring for other people really is the most important thing in life. Loving one another. It's no big secret, is it? Like we all know that looking after each other, loving loving your family and friends. That's no great revelation to any of you. But yeah, it's actually giving ourselves and radicalizing ourselves over to that and saying, okay, this is going to be at the forefront of our lives, and like to me, that feels like a radical act. It feels rebellious, to truly care, both for myself and for people in my community, feels like a rebellion. And so, and it has consequences. It has political consequences and religious consequences if you're going to put people first. So, yeah, that's how I ended up with that.
Yeah, I would say too, I feel like that space of Instagram, I mean, it's open to anyone. And like I don't know, I think was it Pogo quote of like, I shouldn't try and quote something about we found the enemy and he is us or something, like we're all humans on the same team, and hopefully we can bridge the divide. And with the mill piece and with the, of course, I'm like continuously like reflecting on these two realms, because with the mill, we're farmer, miller, baker. Farmer and baker can be two very different ideologically. I mean, even organic farmers over here on Eastern North Carolina, probably not voting the same way as my bakers over here in Western North Carolina. And yet we all meet each other and we're having long conversations and we're going after the same goal. And when you talk about caring for each other, I mean, you know, my daughter went to elementary school in Madison County, and I was so amazed by these wonderful, like, I mean, it was like all the kids went to the Southern Baptist Church in her grade, except for maybe like her and a couple other people. And that's some of them, you know, a lot of them were related, and they were, you know, and it was just like a very insular Southern Baptist community in Walnut, North Carolina. And yet, these people were so good at supporting themselves and being there for each other and having potlucks. Like my friends, we'd be like, oh, we're gonna get together with, oh, this one doesn't eat that, and oh, we need to, you know, like it was like so much harder for, we were so much more complicated, and they were like cohesive and loving and there for each other. And so I don't know, I think those moments where we can bridge those gaps, those, you know, learn from each other, look at our own failings and see where it works on, you know, and not be so divided is this bigger goal. And the mill intrinsically has to do it, and the poetry has like this chance of doing it, being on, you know, because you're talking about such basic human, you know.
I have a poem about
Yeah.
this is again one of the new ones, and it's called It Takes a Village. It takes a village, but there are no villages out here. Only suburbs, an endless city, only ghost towns, where the bonfires burn low, and the barns are no longer raisin, and the rusted water towers lean. Where are we to go? There is no where I can see. I can only see how. Will you be my village? A friend of mine said that reminded them of Mr. Rogers' Will You Be My Neighbor? And it really is that same thing. It's like we've all heard that phrase. I think it's an African phrase originally. It takes a village to raise a child. You know? We just don't have those support networks anymore, do we? Like we are so isolated in our lives. Like, you know, you'll go to the gym in one place, you know, you go to work in another place, your kids go to school in another part of the town, and you know, and maybe you're a member of some club somewhere else, and the people you actually grew up with live, you know, 500 miles away, and you know, most of us, well, a lot of us don't even live near family, you know, a lot of the time. We don't. We live a long way away from nothing. But you know, like the concept of it takes a village to raise a child, it means that like parents we're basically on our own out here. You know, like none of us have these villages, none of us have these, you know, real community connections. We're kind of scraping together a kind of pseudo village from all these different spots, and that includes online too. And you know, and like online friendships have saved my life. Like they have been sources of real encouragement and life. And you know, I've got through many seasons of life through, you know, with the help of people I've met online, you know, who love the same things as me, and you know, we have the same interests, and you know, interesting people, and you know, they're caring people and so forth. But I can't get them to pick me up from the airport, you know, and I can't get them to you know, dog sit and stuff like that. And so we're kind of piecemealing together community wherever we possibly can, and it just isn't enough, right? I you know, that's my experience, and just talking to people, it's our experience that like it's not really enough, and that leaves us feeling isolated, and particularly in a culture that prizes individualism, right? It's like you make it on your own. Like that's the goal. That's what we're all trying to get to, like, you know, in theory. But it makes you feel like a failure constantly. Like, so most parents just feel like total failures. Whereas that failure is actually very normal. Like, you know, like every parent has always felt like a failure since the beginning of time. But because we're so isolated, we feel like particular failures. Like we feel very much a failure in our own little tiny world. And because we're not as connected to other parents and other generations, we're not seeing how that failure is just normal and just what it means to be a parent. We take it, we internalize it. and we feel shame, we feel guilt, we feel like we're not doing a good enough job, and we're not reaching those standards. And unfortunately, Instagram can compound that when we go online and we see influencers, you know, who have enormous amounts of money and, you know, have cooking done for them and cleaning done for them, and it's, you know, all that stuff. And you know, it's like you'll see a trad wife online, you know, baking bread and just, you know, having the most perfect summer dress and all that stuff. You know, it's like their husband is paying for everything, and you know, it's not real. And so yeah, we just don't have these villages, and the only way to do that is, will you be my neighbor? Will you be my village? Like, is it takes that moment of, no one's going to come to you and say, I want to be your village. I want to be, well, no, we're going to have to do that to each other. So I have needs, I have vulnerabilities. I'm not very good at this. You know, my parenting skills are pretty inadequate. My marriage is this, that, or the other. Like, but I know that your marriage is like that. I know that your parenting's weak too. Like, but maybe you're good at things I'm not, and we can get through this together. And so, so one of the elements of rebellion about the book, and I feel like most of the book seems like it's about care, but the rebellion element's really important too, because one of the elements of rebellion is like, it's a radical act to do this because everything is telling us we shouldn't do it this way. The other act of rebellion in it is that I think we're actually going to really need this as things continue to develop. I don't want to be too pessimistic about the future, but I think we are really going to need each other to survive. We are really going to need each other to get through mentally, emotionally, and physically, practically, financially, economically, spiritually, in every sense. We're going to need each other more and more as time goes on. And so that's a huge part of the book. Is like, I'm encouraging people that you're going to need each other. So you better get good at looking after yourself and looking after others. You know, that's, yeah.
Yeah, I think that I remember reading this book in my 20s. It's not very well written, but the concept was really interesting about that sharing a meal with somebody is more powerful. Like, inviting your enemy to sit down and have a meal is going to be the most powerful act than like worth. In this book, it was like people were just being killed, and they would just say, will you come share a meal with me? And then they'd get killed. And eventually the human contact happened where somebody just put down their gun and they started doing it. But that idea of, you know, we have a lot of grain at the mill. We have a lot of grain over there. And I have a friend who has a lot of guns, and I'm not. I don't have a lot of guns. Not many.
I only have 5 or 6.
It's okay. I always feel like, you know, how many can you hold at once? But you know, jokingly, I'm like, oh, you know, if what happens, you know, you can come protect me. But the reality is, I'd rather give the flour away or bake a loaf of bread and give it to somebody. And I feel like this is that thread. Like, can we just believe in these things that are gonna save us? Because humans, we do need each other. And it's I think, yeah, it's like fear and static that keeping us from that.
Yeah, I you know, fear is so prevalent into the kind of why our world is like it is right now, right? So just people are really fearful. People are really fearful of losing what they have. They're fearful of losing who they love, and failing and so forth. And that fear really does lead us to bad decisions. It really does lead us to isolating. It does lead us to staying alone. It does, you know, lead us to that. And really, the only way out of that is to love and care. Like, that's the, you know, the opposite of fear is confidence. The opposite of fear is love. You know, it's to love and give, and be generous, and it's, you know, against the nature of that we have inherited But I think there's something in our blood, in our very DNA that goes way, way, way back that says this is the right way. And so, so one of the things, I finished the book in like October, end of October, beginning of November of last year. And so it was just after Hurricane Helene. And I've been writing about this for 2 years, like, you know, care and community and my newsletter and so much. But then seeing firsthand how everyone here looked after each other instantly. You know, it was like the day it happened, everyone's out, everyone's making sure their neighbor's okay. Doesn't matter who your neighbor voted for, doesn't matter what religion they are, doesn't matter. And, you know, everybody was out and doing that, you know, at least in my neighborhood, and that, you know, that's the stories my friends tell too. I'm sure there were some mean people out there, like, but generally, but really as a community, we all stepped up and we did that for one another. And it was instant. And all it took was a crisis, right? And so all it took was a crisis to activate that which was just below the surface, which is our care and love for one another. The idea that each other are of incredible importance, that we are filled with human dignity, and then that human dignity needs to be looked after, and people's basic needs need to be met, whether that be water, electricity, medicine, you know, like instantly that instinct came forward.
It was amazing. It was
yes.
incredible. My mom was in Cattail Creek in Yancey County, which was one of the hardest hits. I mean, hardest hit areas, like unbelievable. And we would go up there on a side by side because there was no roads or bridges. I mean, a couple people in her community were killed. Her front door knocked out. I mean, it was like, and she's 85. And it was so amazing. My husband and I would go up there and it was so amazing because you're like, people are driving up and they're like, what can I do to help you? Do you need a shovel? Oh, go down to Camp Miller and sign up and they'll come with a backpack. I mean, it was to exist in a space like that. It was like a whole month of, even though there was all this tragedy, it was incredible to see humans just like yearning to help each other. Like it was amazing. And we did a pop-up at the mill and it was like, you know, the bakers, I know Owl came out, they couldn't technically be taking money because we didn't have water here for 53 days, but we had water in Hendersonville and told people come out with a bottle, fill up your water and donate to our bakeries. And I mean, people came out, it was like the first pop-up we did at the mill was on the end of COVID, right? And there was a lot of fear and people had masks and should we have a, you know, and there was a lot of like, should we be coming together? And this one, it was like, it was so clear how much we needed each other and everyone was just so thankful that we offered this space and baked goods and flour and you know you DJ for us too.
But it in the middle of that, it also made me so sad that we just don't have that like all the time, like because 100 years ago they had it all the time and we've given it up. You know, we've let it go. And some of that, you know, I mean, we are all complicit as well. And so it's really important not to just think, well, there's this capitalist system, oh, there's no politicians, oh, it's the corporations, you know, and no, screw those guys. But, you know, like, it's also worth me examining my own complicity in that, and my own comfortability, my own convenience, you know, very little good comes from convenience. You know, like convenience doesn't really lead to like great art. Convenience doesn't lead to like, you know, huge societal change. You know, like, but we value convenience so much in this country, right? And so that was one of the things I really took away from it. So I was like, I need to shed my addiction to convenience and, you know, invest my time and my energy in building on things.
And yet I will say there is the sanity call moment, like, and that's something I try to lean into is just, I need this right now for my sanity, but to have it be that, like to have the balance be that way instead of the other way around where it's the given.
Wonderful. We're gonna take some questions, I think, now.
I don't need a microphone. I've got a loud enough voice. So, is that okay?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, great. So I appreciated what you said before about trying things out in public. It reminded me of Wendell Berry when he says he's an essayist, not a poet, not a preacher, because when he's wrong, he can say, "Well, I was just crying." And I was just curious, like, if you're willing to kind of fess up, or it's like, have there ever been things that were just like, I can't test that out in public, but that's not quite ready, or that's like, what does that filter look like for you?
Yeah, I'll repeat it. So the question was, when sharing things in public, is there ever anything that you can't share in public, or it's very difficult to share in public? Impossible. Oh yeah. Yeah, like there's so much stuff that I want to share and I'm not brave enough to now, even like when things are going well and successful, oh, so you got a book deal, and like, it's like, oh yeah, I mean, that's when it's good. It's like it's so vulnerable that you're scared of putting yourself out into the world, and you're scared of being rejected. I don't think that ever leaves, right? Like, I think the human pack instinct is, I want to belong, and I want to be loved, and I want everyone to like me. And but making yourself vulnerable is always puts that at risk, and that fear of rejection. So absolutely, there are many things. Like there's a whole chapter in this book, right? Which is called "I Pour Out My Notes App in an Attempt to Create Connection." And the way that came about was, I was, in the middle of writing the book, and my notes apps where basically everything begins. It used to be in notebooks back in the day, but now it's just for convenience sake, everything starts in the notes app. And so I went through my whole notes app and just listed all the lines and the pieces and the things that were in my notes app that I thought were good, but hadn't ever become anything. And so I listed them all out and put them all in alphabetical order. And then I read through them, and then I choked up reading through it. So I was like, this is my inner life, listed in alphabetical order. And some of it is strange, and some of it is, I can't imagine that any of you will understand a few of those lines. But some of those lines are like my best lines in the book. And so it's I had this great big list, and I was like, can I put this in the book? Can I share it almost like a little glossary type chapter? And the editors were like, well, we're not sure. Like, as if wrote the book. And I was like, I think creatively I really want to do it. And I had to kind of fight for it a little bit to have it in there, but I'm really glad it did. It also provides like a kind of midway point in the book as well. Hopefully you don't get too bored by reading my inner thoughts alphabetized. But yeah, you have to take those risks. Yeah.
You're safe with us.
I would like to think so, but I'm not sure. Any other questions?
This is another process question. As a writer, my husband's a working musician and songwriter. To publish indicates completion.
Yeah.
Which is a really difficult thing as a writer, we find, because years later, changing words, changing notes, it's never feels complete. How do you find completion?
So the question was, in the process of writing, publishing a book kind of implies completion, and in that process, how do you get to that? Because we always want to, keep going and changing things. Nothing's ever done. For me, it's like it either has to go out into the world, or I can't move on, right? And so the creative impulse is then I want to move on. I want to go and do new things. I have to be done with this thing, and the only way to get it done is to get it out into the world. And so when I know it's at that point, then yeah, I'm sick of it. It's like I'd rather it be in the world and everyone hated it than and for even me hating it than to be stuck here, still working on this thing that's not going anywhere anymore. So yeah, that's part of it. And then I think about I'm a fan of W.H. Auden, the poet, and he would revisit his poems like later on and, you know, adjust them, make, you know, some of his best known poems. There's multiple versions of these poems, and he never made them better. They never got better with his improvements over time, or the things that were bugging him over time. They never got better. I'm a huge Star Wars fan, right? And in the late 90s, or the mid 90s, they did the special edition versions where George Lucas went and fixed some of the things. And, you know, one of the very famous things in that is there's a scene in the original version where Han Solo shoots Greedo in the Mos Eisley Cantina bar. And he changed that in the special edition so that Greedo shoots first and misses, and then Han Solo shoots the guy. But that's not as cool. You know, you want Han Solo to be this rugged smuggler who's just whacking, you know, goons, you know, like it just didn't make it better. And that's when you realize, you know, and then came the prequels, and, you know, it's like, even these geniuses, you know, if you ever watch like the last two Indiana Jones movies, you'll see this too. Like, they don't know what made the original thing good. You know, like, they're making Indiana Jones movies still. They're nowhere near as good as the original ones. Like, it's like the creators themselves don't really know what made it good. You know, they're like, they can't recreate it. They can't make it happen again. And you'll see that in art all the time. It's like, often when you go back and revisit things, like, you actually don't make it better. Like, you kind of maybe will tidy it up a bit, you know?
I would say one thing though, which I think is interesting, with the process, I was recently, I don't know, I was working on a writing project and I went back and was reading here, and what amazes me is you always know when it doesn't work. Like, I had something here that I was rereading, and it was a line that I wasn't getting right, and I went back and read it, you know, recently. This came out in 2001, and thought I fixed it and cringed. It was like, it's still not there. It's still not saying the way, and so I think but I think there's something there about it when it's complete and when it's not complete. Because, I mean, this is very complete, but there's a line that I didn't get right, and I knew it every time. And I'm one to read things out loud. I mean, I will read 100 pages out loud to hear it. And it was just amazing to me to go, oh my gosh. And I'll even, like, I love, like, my husband does editing for me sometimes, and he'll catch those moments that I'm not sure about. I won't tell him, and he'll land on them. So I think that whether it's the muse or whatever it is, I mean, there is a place where it's settled into itself, and it's speaking the way it needs. And there's also a big value in having, you know, I know for me, I mean, I'm very fortunate, we're both very fortunate to have literary agents. So, like, I know that for me, when I'm working on something and I'm like, okay, it's off my desk and I'm going to send it to Laura, and then the work begins. But having, you know, I'm sure you have a group that you work with or whatever. I mean, there's such a value in that, is just getting it off your desk to somebody else. But I you know, recipes may be different, which is an awful thing to have to do. But yeah, it's a completely different way.
I think also, like, the other end of it is not kidding yourself. So, like, not convincing yourself it's okay when you kind of, your inner knowing knows that it isn't. And that's, like, you know, often if you, especially if you're like, you've got deadlines or you're trying to get stuff out, like, I would definitely pay attention to that little inner voice. You know, not the voice that says you're useless, you're terrible, you're not worthy, you're the worst writer in the world. Like, you know, that, I mean, that one never goes away. But the one that says, the one that is you, that says, you know, it's not okay. You're convincing yourself it's okay to reach this deadline, or to just get it out.
Absolutely.
So that's the one.
Yeah, it's the witness, it's the muse, it's whatever you call it, but it's amazing how it knows, because I was floored to read something 3 years later and just, I didn't get it right. And I knew I was pressured by time. I was pressured. One word just was gonna, you know, not be right. And I knew I was pressured by time. I was pressured. One word just was gonna, you know, not be right. And I knew I was pressured by time. I was pressured. One word just was gonna, you know, not be right. And I knew I was pressured by time. I was pressured. One word just was gonna, you know, not be right. And I knew I was pressured by time. I was pressured. One word just was gonna, you know, not be right. And I knew I was pressured by time. I was pressured. One word just was gonna, you know, not be right. And I knew I was pressured by time. I was pressured. One word just was gonna, you know, not be right. And I knew I was pressured by time. I was pressured. One word just was gonna, you know, not be right. And I knew I was pressured by time. I was pressured. One word just was gonna, you know, not be right. And I knew I was pressured by time. I was pressured. One word just was gonna, you know, not be right. And I knew I was pressured by time. I was pressured. One word just was gonna, you know, not be right. And I knew I was pressu It's not keeping me up at night, but it definitely.
And no one else notices. That's the no one else is paying that much attention. That's the sad thing. Any other questions? Yes.
I would consider myself an ex-evangelical,
Yeah.
and writing has helped me a lot, like, through that process. And I would be curious to know what has writing been part of that process for you in your own faith journey?
So the question is, the people at home, how has writing been a part of my faith journey and process and changing faith journey? I mean, enormous. Like, yeah, I've always been like, I'm not a journaler, right? So I've never journaled, and like that's not how, like I always have just written things. So like whether they be essays, poems, lyrics, things that in some level I kind of want to be in the world, right? Whether or not they actually make it there is a whole other thing. But I've always written things that I kind of want to be out there, rather than just like this is my own personal journaling. But same thing, it's like it is my journaling. Like it's like I am making sense of what's happening, and so much of what we experience, particularly in something that can feel kind of esoteric, like spiritual and faith and religion, and working out what you believe, is so much of that is just finding the language. Is finding the language for this experience, this emotion, this thing you've been through, like, and so yeah, enormous. Like I think once you find the language, often the sharpness of the pain can leave a little bit. Like it's almost like part of the pain is I don't have words for it, right? Part of the struggle, part of the existential crisis is that you don't have words for it. And so when you find the words, you can get them, and sometimes they're other people's words, right? Often they're other people's words. But particularly if you can find your own words for it, then immediately it synthesizes it. Art is synthesis. Art is really taking your life, your view of the world, the truth that you see, and synthesizing it into a thing. And that kind of language perhaps does that better than anything, because it's something we all share. Like we can't all dance. I've seen some of you. I know that's true. But we all have language, right? We all share this common thing. Any other questions?
You mentioned 100 years ago, people didn't really have this problem with care. And I'm reminded of my Appalachian grandparents who carried and retained much of the folk ways from centuries ago, all the way back to the British Isles. And even the way they talked, the way they cooked, things like that. What is the role, do you think, or the influence in your own writing of ancestral memory? I mean, we're talking about the future, but we carry the past with us too.
I think I feel like my generation has been kind of unplugged from that, just like almost entirely. Like our ancestral memories are cartoons, from the 80s. And and like I do think like my personal understanding, both I guess a little scientifically, but certainly in feeling and spiritual, is that we are connected, to our ancestors in the past. I think we have a culture that, so I have a lot of Black friends who their culture is very, very different. They're far more connected to their ancestors. Talk about it all the time. And we don't even talk about our ancestors like in my culture. Like we just, it's, and I'm British, so there's a lot of shame in our continent destroying ancestry. But again, that's part of it. Growing up in the UK is that you do history at school, and you'll learn about 1066 when the Normans came over. You'll learn about the Magna Carta in 1115. Is that what it is? 1115. And then you get to Henry VIII and the Tudors, and maybe up to the British Civil War, and then they don't tell you anything until the Second World War, and it's like, oh, we saved the world from fascism in 1945. And he was like, oh, you missed a bit. Like, you know, between Henry VIII and, you know, the great victory against the Nazis, missed a little bit there. And so, yeah, we're so disconnected from our actual histories. And I'm just sad about it. And so, yeah, like one of the things that I've actually done in my faith journey is to seek out the things I've missed, you know, from various histories of, you know, not just the faith that was given to me, but by my parents or by the culture I was in, but like various ancestry, and to draw from them and to gain much from them. So I've tried to, but it's not natural. It's like I feel very disconnected from it. We got time for any more? Or we meant to finish. Wrap up.
And I need to mention.
Oh yes, look, Jennifer baked some brownies
Oh, my.
over there on the.
There are, yeah, rye, salted rye. But yeah, so this is our Renzabruzzi rye. Oh, sorry. This is our Renzabruzzi rye that we've grown in Wake Forest, and they're back there. So please help yourself.
I've already had 3, so my share. But thank you all so much for coming. It's so much fun.